The story begins with a man named John being sent to a mental asylum. John was locked up in a very harsh manner in a jail within the asylum because his behavior led everyone to believe that he had lost his sanity. However, John kept shouting repeatedly that he was fine and nothing had happened to him, yet no one was ready to listen. After some time, John began to feel that someone was trying to open his door. But when he looked, no one was there. As John looked behind, he saw a black shadow standing there. He was extremely frightened and felt that this was his final moment. He was going to die. Suddenly, John began having strange visions, seeing multiple characters, but he had no idea where or why they had appeared. His condition gradually worsened. One day, a psychiatrist visits John. The psychiatrist notices that John has drawn black crosses all over the walls and also on his body, making him look quite bizarre. The psychiatrist starts asking John questions about how he ended up there and what had happened to him. Eventually, John begins recounting his life story. We now flash back to a time when John worked at a high position in a company. He was an insurance agent who provided various ideas to his boss and managed their business. However, the owner of the insurance company asks John to think about a particular case because recently, a reporter who wrote an excellent novel filed a case against their company. If they lose the case, they will have to pay a compensation of $10 million, and the owner did not want that. Therefore, he asked John to figure out how to handle the situation. John takes on this unknown case, determined to solve it. During a break, John visits a restaurant, and suddenly, an unknown man barges in, breaking the mirror. Armed with a weapon, the man tries to attack John. Before the man asks, "Have you read Shutter King's novels?" John is unable to understand who this man is and why he is speaking to him this way. When he looks into the man's eyes, they seem extremely strange, as if he is not human but something else, maybe an alien. Meanwhile, the man raises a weapon to attack John, but just then, two officers present at the scene come in and shoot the unknown man dead. After this, John returns home, continuously watching the news. On the news, many people are involved in riots and disturbances, all over a novel. These novels aren't just any random works, they belong to Ken, an employee working at the same publishing company that filed an insurance claim against John's boss's company. For some unknown reason, people are going insane over Ken's novels. When a novel at a store is unavailable, they even destroy the entire shop. Ken's novels are so widely loved that even before a movie release, people prefer reading his books. After getting a few details, John decides to meet Henry, the owner of that same news publisher company. John then asks about Ken, the writer whose novels are so widely admired. However, Henry casually reveals that Ken has not been seen for several days. Last, he was working on a novel, but after that, he has completely vanished. Ken's agent had read his last sent novel, but you've seen the terrible effects it had. Henry explains that the unknown, crazy man who attacked John in the restaurant was actually Ken's assistant. His actions spiraled out of control after reading Ken's novel. John still struggles to understand what was in that novel. Eventually, Linda, an editor working there, reveals everything to John. She explains that Ken used to write content in his novels that made readers act completely out of control, engaging in bizarre behavior. However, the connection of these writings remains unclear. Still, no one understands it, and when Ken realizes that his stories are not fictional but are based on real events, he stops writing novels for our publishing company. Additionally, the impact of this novel was becoming evident as people were increasingly demanding Ken's future novels. Riots and disturbances were breaking out everywhere. However, John begins to suspect that these events are mere fabrications, likely spread as a publicity stunt. Therefore, Linda recommends that John read the novel himself. With great confidence, John decides to read the novel and begins heading home to read it. But little does John know that he is about to experience bizarre events. As John walks towards his home, he notices a police officer brutally attacking a man. Although John says nothing, when he enters a shop to buy the novel, he encounters a strange boy with many wounds on his face, who tells him, "We are all watching you." John is confused, wondering who he is speaking to. Ignoring the boy, John purchases the novel and heads straight home to read it. Over time, John reads all the recent novels that Ken has published. However, after a while, he suddenly imagines himself in the same scene where the police officer is brutally attacking the man. As he gets closer, the officer's face appears, terrifying and menacing. John becomes extremely scared and starts backing away, but more people are surrounding him, seemingly under someone's control. John is horrified because, moments ago, the man who attacked him in the restaurant was supposed to be dead, yet he is alive. Suddenly, all these people begin surrounding John, trapping and violently attacking him. One out-of-control woman even bites John's finger and consumes it. In the next moment, John abruptly opens his eyes. These dangerous visions began appearing without any warning for John, and he had no idea where they were coming from. When John regained consciousness and looked to his side, he became extremely frightened because the same terrifying police officer was sitting beside him. Realizing this, John suddenly woke up from his imagined world. He was trapped in a deeper level of imagination. As he slowly reads through all of Ken's novels, John begins to understand why everyone is so affected by them. Ken had crafted his stories with such intricate detail that anyone could easily get lost in them. Now, John knows he needs to unravel everything. Therefore, he starts gathering all of Ken's published novels and searching for clues. Eventually, he notices red lines forming strange structures. John quickly removes all the red lines and combines all the novels into one. This leads him to discover a peculiar map, resembling an island. After checking it against a world map, John finds a small island named Polo, which had been removed from the world map years ago. This raises suspicions in John's mind that perhaps Ken is hiding there. Now, he embarks on a deep investigation. John tries to share these findings with the news publisher company and Linda. He goes directly to their office and reveals everything, showing the map where Ken might be hiding and publishing his novels. Linda finds these revelations serious. Therefore, with permission from the chairman, she prepares to join John on a journey to uncover Ken's hidden location. Together, John and Linda set out on their long journey. Although John has pinpointed the island's location, there is no information about a town named Hopes, where Ken might be hiding. Nonetheless, they continue their journey. Due to the long journey, they take turns driving. As night falls, Linda drives while John, exhausted, peacefully sleeps. Suddenly, Linda started experiencing strange visions as well. She saw a boy cycling down a dark path. When the boy noticed Linda, he behaved oddly and continued cycling ahead. A little while later, Linda saw the same boy coming back from the opposite direction. This time, his face appeared mysteriously aged and worn out, and he spoke to Linda, saying, "We are all watching you." Things worsened when Linda continued driving and the same boy, with a disfigured face, collided with her car. He fell backward and painfully hit the ground. In a hurry, Linda quickly stopped her car and went to help him. Being a part-time nurse, she knew how to treat people, but she soon noticed that the man had disappeared and was now cycling away. He gave Linda a strange smile before vanishing into the distance. When John arrived to pick up Linda, she couldn't explain what had happened to him because he would only see it as a joke. For now, Linda sits quietly in the car with John, knowing they still had a long journey ahead. However, this time, things became even stranger. While driving, Linda noticed that her car was floating in the air, and the ground had completely vanished beneath them. She had no idea where they were going, only that they were moving forward. Eventually, Linda closed her eyes and tried to focus on one thought. After some time, they found themselves crossing a bridge that gradually led towards a brighter light. Soon after, Linda opened her eyes to find they had arrived in a town, Hopes, the same mysterious town where Ken might be hiding. The map didn't show this town, and yet, they had somehow reached it. John was puzzled, but together, they stepped out to explore the quiet town. Hopes was eerily peaceful, with no signs of life anywhere. Linda and John, with the intent of finding Ken, began exploring the entire town. Suddenly, Linda saw a dog running frantically, chased by several children. She tried showing this to John, but he couldn't see any of it. This realization made Linda understand that some things might not exist in reality and were merely a vision created by her mind. Continuing forward, Linda and John arrived near a hotel. Upon seeing the hotel, Linda told John that she had read about it in Ken's novel. The novel described a snake-like creature that transformed into a large form and attacked guests, killing them. John hadn't read that part yet, which made him skeptical about believing it. Despite his doubts, John agreed to enter the hotel with Linda. Inside, they encountered a receptionist who spoke with them. Linda, familiar with Ken's novel, began noticing elements from it that existed in reality. There was a painting depicting the creature, and a broken part of the wall that fit perfectly with the descriptions in the novel. What unsettled them the most was that the painting suddenly seemed to come alive and stared at them with its haunting gaze. Afterward, John asked the receptionist for a key to a room, as they intended to stay there for several days. As they settled into their room, they discussed their next steps. Linda explained to John that they had somehow entered a realm detached from reality, where the visions they were experiencing were deeply connected to Ken's novels. She pointed out the intricate details that matched perfectly with the stories they had read. Suddenly, as they looked out the window, they saw a massive, dark church on the other side. John instantly recognized it. He had read about this exact church in Ken's novel, and now they were standing in front of the same church, identical to what they had imagined. John and Linda then decide to immediately head toward the church to find out the truth. Now, perhaps even John realizes that Linda is right. These things can only be resolved when they find Ken and uncover the truth. Both of them continue to travel toward the church. John and Linda keep reading the same novel over and over, hoping to get clues about what will happen next. After reading the book, John tells Linda that inside the church, there are dangerous creatures locked away in a chest, and only Ken has the power to release them. Shortly afterward, the residents of the town gather around the church because they've discovered that Ken has kidnapped their children. When the door opens, a child from the town is seen, looking at them in a very strange way. When the door closes and then opens again, Ken is shown standing there, releasing his wild dogs on the townspeople. These dogs begin viciously attacking the townsfolk. In order to save their lives, John and Linda run away from there. After returning to the hotel, John starts believing that everything is just a publicity stunt arranged by the publishing house to stop him from investigating and to claim their insurance. John feels that everything that has happened up to this point was orchestrated by the company to protect themselves. However, Linda insists that although the company might have spread false news about Ken's disappearance, they never truly kidnapped him. Everything that has happened to them, the strange arrival of their car in this unknown town, and the events that followed, are real, and the company has no involvement in it. Linda repeatedly tries to make John understand, and now she shares the final novel's ominous revelations with him, explaining that soon, dangerous creatures from the Black Church will emerge, gradually affecting the children and then the entire town. Therefore, they must leave immediately. John grew increasingly angry and decided to go alone. He no longer trusted any of Linda's words. Linda only insisted that if they want to escape from here, they must find Ken's latest novel, which has not been published yet. However, John, without thinking further, starts walking away alone. He reaches the reception area where he notices that the photo frames, which initially seemed normal, are gradually transforming into something grotesque and surreal. Although John believes that the paintings must have been altered, he pays no attention to it and leaves. But, according to the novel, as Linda had said, the receptionist holds her own husband captive, and this is happening in reality as well. While walking back to his car, John suddenly finds out that Linda has driven off in his car toward the Black Church. John doesn't understand why she's doing this, so he is forced to go on foot. Near a nearby bar, the owner tells him to leave the town immediately because a dangerous creature has been unleashed from the Black Church. Soon, this creature will capture children and gradually spread its influence worldwide. Meanwhile, Linda is shown having reached the Black Church. Before entering the church, several strange children surround her, appearing to be controlled by some unknown force. The children seem eerily odd, and one of them even bites off the leg of a nearby dog. Though Linda doesn't show much fear, the children, for some unknown reason, start calling her mother. Ignoring these unsettling events, Linda enters the church. Inside, she sees the upside-down cross hanging without any support. Suddenly, someone pulls her from behind into a strange, dark chamber. Inside the chamber, we finally see Ken, who has completed his final novel, which has not been published yet. This novel, the next part of the story, is titled In the Mouth of Madness. Here, Ken forces Linda to read the novel, revealing that the dangerous creature, the king, is none other than Ken himself, and his princess is Linda. The reason was that those controlled children were calling Linda mother, and now Ken takes control of Linda in the same way. Meanwhile, we are shown John, who is heading back to his hotel. However, as he looks at the photo frame, the couple transforms into bizarre creatures. John is completely terrified when he sees strange tentacles emerging from the receptionist's body. According to the novel, as described, she immediately takes her husband's life. Now, John starts realizing that perhaps Linda was right because these events are happening in reality. John even calls a waitress, but she too turns into a tentacle-like creature trying to escape. Therefore, John quickly escapes the hotel, heading towards the Black Church. On the way, John notices that Linda is present and that several people seem to be under Ken's control, perhaps planning to sacrifice her. Linda remains silent, leaving John unable to understand what to do. Thus, he enters the bar to seek help from a man, but the man is aware of everything and believes that he will soon transform into a creature. This prompts the man to shoot himself. John is completely shocked, realizing that he needs to save Linda alone. As he approaches Linda outside, she suddenly begins attacking him. Although John is severely injured by her attacks, he manages to restrain her and forcibly puts her in the car. A crowd is gathering towards his car to catch them, but John maneuvers the car away from the town. During the journey, Linda tries to overpower John, getting very close to him. Due to this, John has to stop the car midway. Here, John suddenly realizes that the man cycling and staring at them is now visible to him as well. Even more terrifying, Linda exits the car from behind, contorting her entire body unnaturally and approaching John in a bizarre manner. John becomes extremely frightened at this point. Therefore, he sat alone in the car and started driving away, but surprisingly, no matter how far he went, he kept teleported back to the same town. Despite trying multiple times, John couldn't understand, which led him to become extremely angry and start running over the people who were out of control and harassing him. However, even though he managed to run over several people with his car, in the next moment, Linda appeared before him. Since he couldn't bring himself to harm Linda, he steered the car aside, causing an accident. John suffered significant injuries, but when he opened his eyes, he found himself in a strange, small chamber. This was actually a victim room set up by Ken, where he kept his characters. John realized that if he couldn't escape the town, it meant there was something fundamentally different about this spacetime, suggesting that this town might not exist on actual Earth but only exists through a temporal reference. This was why, whenever John tried to leave, he kept getting teleported back. John suddenly hears Ken's voice, where Ken reveals that he has completed his novel, and within it, John is also a character who completes the entire story. John is shocked to understand who Ken is referring to. Ken explains that all his novels serve as incantations to open the devil's portal, causing people to become hypnotized. The more people read, the more energy would accumulate to open the portal. If his final novel spreads widely, the portal for the old ones will be opened, and all those dangerous creatures will be set free. Humanity's existence will become purely fictional, leaving us unable to determine whether we exist or not. John becomes terrified at the thought that the entire world could be consumed by these creatures, and people will be controlled. Just moments later, Ken opens a strange portal, telling John this is the way to escape the town. John tells Linda that they need to leave immediately. However, Ken bizarrely tears himself apart like a piece of paper, creating the dark portal for the creatures. With the portal opening, countless dangerous creatures begin emerging from it. John was now continuously trying to escape the town, but behind him were the same dangerous creatures that Ken had just freed through the dark portal. John tried to run away from them, but the creatures were closing in rapidly. John eventually gave up and collapsed, unconscious. However, when he opened his eyes, it seemed that he had teleported back to his real world. In his hands, John held the same last novel written by Ken. Quickly regaining consciousness, John rushes with the novel to a publisher's office. But here, John is hit with a shocking reality. This publisher had sent him alone for investigation purposes, implying he didn't even know about an assistant named Linda. The truth is that Linda has become trapped in that fictional world, and her connection to the real world has been severed. Essentially, Linda doesn't exist in the real world. The publisher further reveals that some months ago, they received Ken's final novel, after which he mysteriously vanished, and now, a movie adaptation of that novel is about to release. Upon learning this, John realizes that if the novel and movie gain widespread attention, the dark portal's energy will only increase, and those dangerous creatures could soon invade the real world. However, it may be too late for John. The novel had already been released for some time, and many people had started reading it. As John steps outside, he hears discussions about the novel and sees that the movie has already been released, with everyone obsessed with it. John's mind was overwhelmed with pain, and he couldn't decide what steps to take next. Finally, he approaches a man who is engrossed in reading the novel, and seeing blood oozing from the man's eyes, John realizes that he too will soon be under the creature's control. In a moment of desperation, John takes out an axe and kills the man. This act leads John to be imprisoned, and our story transitions into the present where Officer Ram is interrogating John inside the jail. John was still trying to convince Officer Ram, but it seemed futile. Ram dismissed John's words as mere madness, thinking he was acting crazy to avoid any punishment and get out of jail. However, John continued to explain the truth, but Ram walked away without listening. A few days later, exactly what John feared began to happen. The portal had become too strong, and all the creatures had teleported into the real world. Within moments, they started killing humans indiscriminately. John, hiding in a corner, was filled with fear, unwilling to face them. Yet, eventually, he had no choice but to step out as he couldn't remain hidden forever. As he moved forward, he saw lifeless bodies and blood spread everywhere. The destruction was widespread, and it was evident that the creatures had launched a full-scale attack. On his way, a radio message played, alerting that mutated creatures had taken over the planet, killing people relentlessly. The population had plummeted below 50%. John had known this would happen, but no one believed his warnings. In a desperate bid for answers, John eventually finds himself in a theater. As the final scene of Ken's movie plays, John sees his own face on the screen, playing the lead character, the main character of Ken's twisted world. Shocked and horrified, John watches the entire movie. His character's journey mirrors everything he and Linda had gone through since they set out to find Ken and unravel the mystery of his novels. The movie details every moment, from the time they uncovered the truth about Ken to the horrifying creatures and the dark portal. John becomes increasingly unhinged, laughing uncontrollably in a disturbing manner. It was as if reality had merged with fiction, and he couldn't distinguish between the two anymore. The film depicted his descent into madness, making him question whether he had truly crossed into a realm where fiction and reality were one and the same. And now, only Ken knew about this, after which our dangerous story comes to an end.